Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, the CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. We're going to be talking today about important tips on getting board succession and composition right. And joining me, who I might consider an expert in this space, is Linda Rubovic, who's a board member with HealthStream Incorporated. Linda, welcome.
Thank you, TK. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back again. So we're going to be talking about a different topic this time. And first of all, I want to let the audience know that the reason our backdrop is different, we're on a remote in the lovely city of Nashville, Tennessee. And special thanks goes out to Lipscomb University and their Dean Institute for Corporate Governance and Integrity. That's such a great host to have us. So I want to thank them for when we come up to Nashville to do a remote. So Linda, probably the first thing we can do is sort of educate the audience on exactly what HealthStream is and what it does.
TK, HealthStream develops America's healthcare workforce. And why do we do that? Because if we can develop the people who deliver care, then we can improve the quality of healthcare. HealthStream is primarily a software as a service company headquartered right here in Nashville, where you are today. We have over 1,000 employees, and we serve our customers are over half of the nation's hospitals and health systems in all 50 states. We have about a little over 4.5 million professionals who use the products and tools that are on our HealthStream platform. We're a NASDAQ-traded company, and again, as I mentioned, we have over 1,000 employees, but we are headquartered right here in Nashville.
Well, I've always heard good things about it, and I know you guys have had some great growth recently. So you at HealthStream have gone through some different chairs. You served as the presiding director for a period of time. You served as the governance and nominating chair for a certain time. And those things are related to board composition and succession of directors are the top issues that people are talking about today from a board perspective. The investors that we've had a chance to talk to in our investor board performance review always come back to the issue of board composition. So what makes you so interesting on this is not only have you had that experience from inside the boardroom, but in your current job, you are a management and board recruiter for Morgan Samuels. So you're able to sort of give the perspective of doing the search itself, in addition to the responsibilities that the board has to sort of vet candidates and do that. So talk, my sort of view from board succession is there's been so much focus on management succession and CEO succession. Now that pendulum's swinging and investors are understanding the value of board succession. I see it that companies are just learning how to do this well. What's your take?
Well, I happen to wholeheartedly agree with you. My perspective has been that, as you mentioned, 20 years on boards, I have seen boards learn how to do CEO succession and management succession processes and really be prepared. On the other hand, they have to be equally as prepared, and they need to look equally as important at board succession. So you nailed something that I think is a huge topic in boards today. And it's very different, the kind of directors that you're looking for, in my opinion. You need to have people who can deal with the day-to-day, meet quarterly demands, provide the oversight and risk management. But in my perspective and what I'm seeing is so much more important on boards today is the ability to be forward-thinking, to be able to be looking at the future and to bring a broad perspective. And one of the most telling statistics I just saw is in 1960, the average S&P 500 company was 60 years old. Today, it's less than 15. So what is going on in every single industry is that companies have to reinvent themselves. I mean, you really have to be ready for disruption in your industry. You've really got to be always on the pivot of strategy and pivoting your company and competitive advantages and looking at the landscape of the ecosystem and your competition. And so in my mind, what we're seeing at Morgan Samuels and what I'm seeing in the boards I'm on is that we have to find board members that are visionary, that bring that strategic mindset, that can be the partner, that can be the advisor. You know, one of our most important meetings that we have at HealthStream is our board strategic retreat. And we spend a significant amount of time, the management spends a significant amount of time, the board spends a significant amount of time, but what I hope you're seeing is in our growth is that innovation that we're looking to bring, and most of it comes out of discussions at our strategic retreats. The other thing I would call your attention to, and I would challenge all board members to think about, is when they begin a search process, and this is one of the methodologies that really drew me to Morgan Samuels. We start with the key business objectives. We don't start with the skills assessment. We start with where does the company need to be in 2 years? Where does the board need to be in 2 years? And these have to be very measurable outcomes. And so when you start there, 2 years out, you're going to find the right candidate who can get you 2 years out. And so I strongly believe that defines your must-have skills. And in those skills are not only the skills for the company, the culture fit to the board, but it's the strategic thinking, because the success of the board and of the company is how well they perform in the long term.
Yeah. So when I talk to board recruiters today, I get feedback that people are asking for fairly specific candidates, like they make a commitment to that the next one will be a diverse candidate, whether that's a woman or someone of color. They make the commitment that they want somebody that has some cyber security experience. Are you seeing the same thing where sometimes the searches that you get are pretty narrow?
Yes, but again, what we require and work with our clients to do is to broaden that to, okay, those are the must-have experiences and skills you need, but where do you want the company to be in 2 years? Because you're narrowing your mindset too small. And so yes, you can find people with cybersecurity expertise, and yes, you can find people with expertise in M&A, but you can also, by talking to hundreds of candidates, you can't just go to the traditional pool that you always go to and just ask the board members. And again, that's why I do appreciate so much what a search firm like Morgan Samuels and others can do, is because we can talk to hundreds of candidates, and we require that our teams do that so that we make sure that we look for the one that not only knows cybersecurity, is a cultural fit with the board, but also is future focused and has the skills to look, toward the strategy for the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's go back to your board experience, and I want to talk about even the best recruiters or the best corporate governance and nominating chairs sometimes don't have the best candidate, okay? Or that might not work out, or there's somebody that's been on the board for a long time.
That's what normally happens.
Yeah, that isn't, whose maybe skill set isn't fitting in with what's, to your point, companies that have to reinvent themselves also have to reinvent the board sometimes on what skill sets and knowledge you have. So so the issue of board evaluations comes into play, and we wouldn't need age requirements, we wouldn't need term limits if we're good in board evaluations. Talk a little bit about, from your experience on the various boards that you've been on, what you see as most effective when it comes to board evaluations.
Yeah, I mean, and just as you're saying, it's just like the management of a company. The board's the same thing. As the company grows and the company changes, you need people who can fit that new direction. You need people that can scale. And normally everyone can't scale over 15 years in the same position. So I wholeheartedly support your concept that if you don't have really strong board evaluation process, it makes it much, much harder to help people understand that for this time in the company, you're not bringing the right skills, and therefore you're not being successful. You know, it is clear, it is so obvious, obviously, at every board meeting and every committee meeting when you see someone who's falling behind and not able to contribute. But my learning, as I say, my teaching came from Ira Milstein, as you know, when he was helping the KPMG board, and I was heading up the board and process committee. And he came in from Weil Gotshal to help us build a governance structure. And you know, you should have seen us doing self-evaluations and peer evaluations. But he taught me that those peer evaluations are the most important thing you can do as a validation to what you're seeing otherwise. And to be able to give that information to that director that shows that year-over-year trend and shows that against the median of the ratings, if you will, of all the other board members, you're too far behind. And so we did put that process in place at HealthStream. And you know, normally it's very anonymous. The NIME committee only sees the overall scores. It says board member 1, board member 2, and we move on. But if somebody falls below the score that we believe is appropriate as compared to everyone else, then the governor's chair speaks to those candidates individually and talks about, you know, how to help them improve or how to help them come to the conclusion or how to make sure they know they're not going to be up for re-election. And so, you know, I think if a board's not doing self and peer evaluations, then they are not doing the right thing for their shareholders.
Well, I think it's been confirmed that there's nothing that changes behavior like peer evaluation.
Right.
So.
And it's self improvement. I mean, we're putting on the board director to look at those scores and come up with their own process to improve. And so you're right, that is how it should be.
Yeah. Well, Linda, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us here at Lipscomb University and the Dean Institute. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take a look at another critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.